At the center of his remarks is a claim about what scholars often call regulatory capture, a concept from political economy describing situations where public institutions gradually begin to reflect the interests of powerful private actors rather than the public they are meant to serve.
Mr. Smith, I'd like to walk through what I see as the backdrop to this proceeding. As you may know, I think that there has been a deliberate effort to capture our courts by basically right-wing billionaires, many affiliated with fossil fuel interests, that the capture effort focused particularly on the Supreme Court, that it has been successful, that the methodology was the traditional methodology that is has a huge literature in the field of economics and administrative law of regulatory capture and agency capture, that in the same way that the robber barons who ran mines captured the Mining Safety Commission so they always got the rules they wanted, and in the same way that railroad barons captured the Railroad Rate Commission so they always got paid what they wanted, an effort was made that has been effective to capture the Supreme Court. That's the background that I start with. One of the point people for this crew of right-wing billionaires was a guy named Leonard Leo. He was sort of their agent and court fixer in this effort. I have used a graph before that described the corporate structures that he set up to accomplish this effort. I refer to it as the Leo bug because it looks a little bit like an insect. This is the original shape of his effort. These central groups tend to be actual corporate entities. These are fictitious names through which the other entities can operate. Lexington Fund is yellow here because until recently it was called Concord Fund. What happened with the Leo bug is that a billionaire dumped on Leonard Leo a $1.6 billion slush fund through the Marble Freedom Trust. And in the wake of that enormous flow of funds, we have seen the Leo bug metastasize. One new element is something called Alliance for Consumers Action. It's another fictitious name, in this case, for the renamed Lexington Fund. And if you take a look at Alliance for Consumers Action, you see that there are actually 5 different groups that are all almost identically named. Alliance for Consumers Action Fund, Alliance for Consumers Fund, Alliance for Consumers Action, Alliance for Consumers Action Fund, and Alliance for Consumers Action Fund. And they are connected to various different groups for which they operate under fictitious names. So Lexington Fund and Concord were the two that were in the original Leo bug. If you go back to the original Leo bug, you also see the Honest Elections Project. This was used to file an amicus brief in the Supreme Court without disclosing its affiliation with the Judicial Crisis Network, which spent millions of dollars to get 3 Leonard Leo selected Supreme Court justices appointed to the court. They didn't bother to disclose that. They filed an amicus brief in court under a fictitious name. And post Marble Freedom Trust and the $1.6 billion, we've seen the Honest Elections Project also metastasize. Now there's an Honest Elections Project. There's an Honest Election Project, not plural. There's an Honest Elections Project Action Fund. There's an Honest Elections Project Fund. There's an Honest Elections Project Action, and there's Honest Election Project Action. And again, they connect to as fictitious names for those same 4 Leonard Leo entities: Lexington Trust, Lexington Fund, Yorktown Fund, 85 Fund, Concord Fund, and a new one, the Publius Fund. So that's a lot of corporate activity. If you want to pull what this old Leo bug in its rather dark simplicity looked like, this is now what it looks like. There are more than 20 organizations, all with these very alike names: American Parents Coalition Fund, American Parents Coalition Action Fund, American Parents Coalition Action, American Parents Coalition, American Parents Coalition Action, and they all connect as fictitious names of those 5 Leo entities: Lexington Fund, Yorktown Fund, 85 Fund, Concord Fund, and Publius Fund. That is a pretty remarkable creation, presumably designed to mislead. Why would you have 5 or 6 virtually identical names for separate fictitious names screening corporate entities? And when we get to you, you've got connections with almost all of them. You've got connections with the Yorktown Fund, you've got connections with the Concord Fund, you've got connections with the Lexington Fund, you've got connections with Club for Growth Action in Missouri, American Patriot Fighters, First Principle Actions, Defend Missouri, Publius Fund, and Teneo Network, all of which get money from the Leonard Leo bug, from that operation. So it looks to me like what we have here is somebody who is going to be planted on the court and bide your time until you get a case in which this group of front groups has an interest, and then they will turn up the way they do in the Supreme Court in a flotilla of phony front group, amici. And when that happens, I'm here to predict that you will rule for them 100% of the time.
Whitehouse is extending that idea beyond regulatory agencies into the judiciary itself. Traditionally, courts are treated as the most insulated branch of government, but his argument is that insulation does not mean immunity from influence. To make his case, he describes a network of nonprofit organizations, political advocacy groups, and legal entities that appear, on the surface, to operate independently but are allegedly interconnected through funding streams and shared leadership structures. His reference to fictitious names is important here, not necessarily in the legal sense of fraud, but in the structural sense of branding fragmentation. The idea he is presenting is that when organizations are split into many similarly named entities, it can become difficult for the public to immediately see how money and messaging flow between them. That fragmentation, in his view, creates opacity rather than transparency.